So you probably think you know the story of how cannabis became illegal in the United States. It's got its usual cast of characters, right? But what if I told you the public faces of that crusade weren't the ones really in charge? What if the real mastermind has been hiding in plain sight this whole time?
When you picture who made cannabis illegal, a few key figures probably pop into your head. They were the ones out front, making all the noise.
You've got Harry Anslinger, America's first so-called drug czar. Then there's William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper tycoon who basically weaponized public fear. And of course, the DuPont family with their new, shiny chemical empire. For decades, these are the names that have owned this story.
But here's the thing. What if they weren't the true architects of Prohibition? What if they were just the frontmen for a plan cooked up by someone with way more power and a whole lot more to lose?
And that brings us to this man, Andrew Mellon. You see, he wasn't the guy on the newsreels, but as we're about to find out, he had the motive, he had the means, and he had all the right connections to make the whole thing happen.
To really get what kind of influence we're talking about, you have to understand the sheer scale of his power. Mellon wasn't just rich, he was one of the wealthiest men on the entire planet, with his hands in banking, steel, you name it. And, this is the crucial part, he was the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury for over a decade, serving under 3 different presidents.
And this quote really gets to the heart of it. For a guy like Mellon, money wasn't just the end goal, it was a tool. A tool he used to get his hands on incredible political power. And then he used that power to bend national policy to his will.
So how does a guy like that get so deep into drug policy specifically? Well, it all kicks off with a very, very convenient family connection.
The link between these two is almost comically direct. Harry Anslinger, the man who would become the face of the war on drugs, he was married to Andrew Mellon's niece. So Mellon wasn't just his boss at the Treasury Department, he was Uncle Andrew.
And believe me, that family connection paid off right away. The second the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created in 1930, guess who used his political muscle as Treasury Secretary to put someone in charge? Yep, Mellon installed his nephew-in-law, Anslinger, as the very first commissioner.
Now you might be thinking, oh, he was just doing a favor for a family member. But this was so much more than that. It was a cold, calculated, strategic move. Mellon put someone he could control in a key position of federal power for a very, very specific reason.
And that reason, as it so often does, all comes down to money. To really understand Mellon's hidden agenda here, all we have to do is follow his investments.
I mean, it's the central question, isn't it? Why on earth would a powerful titan of industry and finance give a second thought to a plant like cannabis? What could he possibly have to gain?
Well, the answer is a massive conflict of interest. See, Mellon had huge financial stakes in companies like DuPont, which was just starting to roll out amazing new synthetic fibers like nylon. A major competitor that was cheap, natural, and incredibly strong? Hemp. At the exact same time, natural cannabis-based medicines posed a threat to the booming pharmaceutical industry. And, yep, you guessed it, Mellon was heavily invested there too.
It's actually pretty simple when you break it down. By making cannabis illegal, Mellon could wipe out a major competitor in both the industrial world and the medical world, all in one shot. It was the perfect way to use government power to protect his bottom line.
So he's got his guy Anslinger in place, and his financial motives are crystal clear. The final piece of the puzzle was the law itself, and that came in the form of the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act.
Now, this act was sneaky. It was really clever. It didn't actually come out and say cannabis is banned. Oh no. Instead, it slapped such insanely high taxes and created such a confusing maze of rules that it became basically impossible to legally grow, sell, or even possess the plant without risking bankruptcy and jail time. It was prohibition, just disguised as a tax law.
And just like that, the whole plan snapped together perfectly. Step 1, the law gets passed. Step 2, Mellon's hand-picked guy, Anslinger, enforces it with terrifying enthusiasm. And Step 3, Mellon's investments are now safe from the competition. It was an absolute masterstroke.
So when we look back at all this, what's the final verdict on Andrew Mellon's role? What's his real legacy in this whole story?
Well, for one thing, it tells us that all that reefer madness propaganda, all that talk about public safety, that was just a convenient story. It was a smokescreen designed to scare people. Behind that curtain, the real motivations were all about dollars and cents.
No, the war on cannabis was fueled by money and power.
It's a textbook example of crony capitalism, where government policy isn't shaped for the public good, but to protect the fortunes of a handful of incredibly wealthy and powerful individuals.
At the end of the day, while Harry Anslinger was the one giving the speeches and whipping up the hysteria, Andrew Mellon was the silent architect. He had the power, he had the money, and he had the personal motive to set the entire destructive machine in motion.
And that's why this story is so much more than just a piece of history. It's a huge cautionary tale. It forces us to ask a really critical question when we look at the world today. Whose interests are really shaping the laws we live under? And are their true motives just as hidden as Andrew Mellon's were?